and paints a negative image for a government that has over the years worked to consolidate a progressive democracy trajectory for Uganda. The National Unity Platform notes that they lost invaluable property which was taken by the security forces, including money and property. The incursion of NUP can be interpreted as an ill political motive that is aimed at intimidating and disorganizing NUP election preparation, 1 day to nomination for members of parliament and 2 weeks to nomination for presidential candidates. The action equally erodes voter confidence in the electoral processes ahead of the 2021 general elections. Such actions constitute a reversal on the democratic gains that Uganda has made over the years and clearly constrain young people's participation in a country with predominantly young population like Uganda. Call to action.
Article 29 of the Constitution of the Republic of Uganda, 1995, guarantees protection of these freedoms, which include freedom of the press and other media, freedom of association, which includes freedom to form and join political or civic organizations. The state is mandated under Article 20 and Article 21 of the Constitution to promote and protect these rights and freedoms regardless of, among others, one political opinion. What we see going on at the moment is the reversal of what the state is supposed to be doing. We thus make the following calls. To the security forces, adopt a dialogue approach in the interest of peaceful elections to seek out more civilized ways of contacting the leadership of any political party or actors, even when acting on intelligence, rather than using force as if they were a counter force against the security, as this undermines the spirit of political organizations, of the Political Organizations Act and elections. Restrain your officers from the use of excessive force unnecessarily and respect the dignity of all Ugandans. Immediately release all individuals in detention over the unfortunate events, including NUP party members and the innocent tailors that were arrested from downtown. To the Electoral Commission. The Electoral Commission needs to reassume its mandate of managing all election-related activities. The Electoral Commission, therefore, needs to reassure Ugandans that they are committed to providing a fair playing field for all Ugandans by condemning the actions of the security forces and continuously sensitizing the security forces on their roles and mandate in elections. The EC needs to work with security forces to return all the confiscated campaign materials and investigate all officers involved in the raids. The EC needs to discuss and harmonize the electoral rules of scientific campaigns and implement them with the fairness and universality that they deserve. The EC needs to denounce, to the young people across the country. Young people, considering our demographic strength, we need to know that we have an important role to play in the next elections. We need to denounce election violence by state and non-state actors and desist from engaging in any acts of violence in the upcoming elections. We should also use our demographic strength to peacefully participate in the next elections and make our voice sound and count. To the international community. The international community needs to publicly speak out, both bilaterally and in international fora, in close coordination with like-minded countries, on the need for the Ugandan government to respect regional and international legal instruments on elections and rights and freedoms in its constitution, and to amend or repeal all abusive legislation. Our commitment. As representatives of young people in Uganda, we condemn in the strongest terms the continued abuse of such rights by the state. We condemn the unfortunate events at the National Unity Platform offices of Wednesday 14th, October 2020, at the NUP offices. and the continued harassment of dissenting politicians by the state, and any form of election violence. We thus commit to work with legal aid institutions to support the victims of election violence and pursue a legal approach to ensuring election justice for all Ugandans, including using the Human Rights Enforcement Act to conduct private prosecutions of errant security officials involved in violence against Ugandans. We will also work through our framework to continuously document and expose all forms of election violence and the perpetrators for God and my country.
I would also invite my colleagues to have comments before we can conclude. Prosper.
Yeah, thank you very much, and thank you to Jens for turning up to this conference. One, we have talked of working on legal aid through the Human Rights Enforcement Act. Now, if you are not aware, and if you're a security force officer there, last year Parliament passed the Human Rights Enforcement Act, and one of the things it provides for is individual prosecution of security officers that violated the rights of people. So you may do it under command, but the Human Rights Enforcement Act empowers Ugandans to privately and individually prosecute you for the actions you do while in office. So it is incumbent upon all of us to respect human rights and to treat people with dignity and do what we are supposed to do as the law says, not as the leaders say. That's one thing. Secondly, to the government or the state, any democracy is premised on 3 core fundamentals, which are known as the 3 Ds: dissent, dialogue, and discussion. So we know that the state is vested with powers and with the authority to use force and any instruments of force and violence. But then, if the 3 fundamentals of discussion, dialogue, and dissent are resorted to, then we shall have a fair execution or application of those instruments of force. So we call upon the state to resort to those fundamentals before making decisions that could impact on our electoral democracy. Now, we have made a call to the international community. All of us know that this year, according to the African Union, is the year that has been termed silencing the guns. And the Intergovernmental Organization on Dialogue, IGAD, is working on ending extremism and fundamentalism among certain segments of the community, who are the young people mainly. So, and one of the ways extremism and violence can be perpetrated is when young people feel disenfranchised and no longer take solace from electoral contestation. So we call upon the African Union and the IGAD to take keen interest in this government and how we are conducting the 2020-2021 general election, so that we don't have a disenfranchised, a disgruntled, and unhappy generation of young people. So on that, we call upon the international community. Then, as the platform for youth inclusion in politics, we know that having the voices of young people in the policy and decision-making arena heard is very crucial. And part of the commitments we are making is ensuring that we have the National Youth Manifesto of 2021-2026 out and using it to engage and work on issues of electoral participation and how we shall engage with our political actors going forward. So you can look upon it, and we as young people commit that to becoming. Thank you very much.
And also, as the security organs who are entrusted with ensuring that violence extremism is not perpetrated, they are ending up to be the ones who are actually perpetrating it. So our appeal to the head of securities, both in the UPDF and the IGP and of course the commander-in-chief, is that let's have clear regulations on the mandate of the military and the mandate of the police in terms of what we are meant to do. Because as young people, we have decided to organize ourselves to act in the law and peacefully to ensure that we participate in these democratic spaces. But if that right is infringed over technicalities, over excuses, and not in a fairly equalized field whereby it's only the opposition attacked and not the ruling party and so on, then it changes the game for us. Any other comments from any of my colleagues?
Maybe for me to re-emphasize that this call to action does not mean that we belong to NUP. But what we are trying to say is that an injustice to one political party is an injustice to all Ugandans, is an injustice to all political parties, and it should therefore be condemned, because we all have constitutional rights to participate in the governance processes of this country, and therefore we will not just look on as injustices are happening to our colleagues, to our fellow political parties, and not say anything. So we condemn these acts of violence in elections and politics on behalf of all Ugandans, not only NUP. Thank you.
Actually, for me, just to add to what my colleague Shiba is saying, is that if you have been following events in Uganda, you realize that this state-inspired violence is not even directed at only political parties. It has been directed to the media. We all recall the unfortunate siege on the Monitor. Was it around 2015? Around 14-15. I think, again, the Red Pepper was sieged. Shortly after that, we recall the Go Forward political pressure group was also sieged around 2015, just before, on the eve of elections, just like the National Unity Platform has been sieged on the eve of the elections. FDC was sieged during and after the elections. Fast forward, civil society suffered the same brunt of the excessive use of violence by the state. You remember all vividly the raid on Action Aid, our partners, in 2017 during the Tojikwatako era, the raid on Greece, the raid on the Public Affairs Center in Soroti, Solidarity Uganda, the Uhuru Institute, among others. So clearly, what we see is not even an isolated attack on a political entity, which is NUP. We are seeing a clearly calculated attack on all forms of citizen organizing, on all forces of democracy in Uganda. And all Ugandans need to know that if it hasn't yet reached your home, it will reach you soon. So we all must unite and stand up, reject and denounce this systematic and systemic attack on Ugandans.
And as the platform for youth inclusion in politics, we are working on an electoral violence tracker, and we'll be sharing with you, the media, and of course the authorities, some of these things that are happening, so that we are able to actually bring justice to books. So I would also now request my colleague to take us through the Luganda version of the